Using the robot template that I put together, you can create your own little robot shell, and you can use the parts that I've included to make sure that your robot will work with all of the microbits and the motor drivers and whatnot that we have. So the first thing I did was I created an arch, and I'm stretching it out right now to make sure that it's going to fit the motor drivers. And so I'm going to move my motor driver down, and that's the holder that's going to hold both the left and the right motors. Now, after I'm sure that everything is okay, I'll just keep it that same width, but I'll stretch it down because I want to make it a little bit longer. And the reason for that is because it helps to keep the balance. If you have it sort of a square or a circle, you have to have something in the front and the back to keep it from rocking. But if you stretch it out longer, then you can use just the caster that we have as well as the wheels to keep it balanced. Now I stretched it out to make it approximately the size that I want it to be. And now I'm making an invisible box, a hole, a hollow shape. And I'm just trying to create the angle that I want for my arm to be on the robot shell. And I kind of mess with it a little bit here and there to make sure it's the right angle and that it's stretched out so that it covers the area that I want it to be. But when I'm sure that it's the right thing, I will just join the two together, and then it cuts off the front. Now what you have here is still a great big shape, but to keep things simple, I'm not going to be making a wheel well or anything like that. I'm just going to make another box that is the same as this one. So I copy it, I duplicate it, and when I duplicate it, it's going to make it in the same spot. And now I'm adjusting the size of the box. So the box on the inside is going to need to be smaller. I like to subtract 3 from all the sides in order to make it the right size. So take 3 off the top, 3 off the bottom, 3 off the left, 3 off the right, and then I'm going to move it back 3 steps. And then when I join them, it'll be hollow, and you can see that here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put my parts in place so I can see what my robot's going to look like. So I put my my motor holders in, and then I'm going to go and put in my front caster on there and make sure that it's in the right spot. Now it is important that when you're putting these things together that you are joining them so that one is inside of the other. And the reason that you do that is so that they will be one thing and not two, because you can technically join things that aren't touching using Tinkercad. And then when you go to print them out, they print out as two, and you'll see what that looks like later on when I show you what I printed out, because I did not make my caster tower touch the bottom of my design that I had created for my robot shell. Now I'm going to go ahead and get my arm. Now the arm is very important, and you need to have that elbow, that top pokey thing on the right side of your robot facing up. It should not face down. If you face it down, it's not going to be able to pick things up. So you want to make sure that that elbow part is all the way up. And then I'm just centering it here to make sure that it's on my robot shell the way I want, and making sure the angle is correct and checking to see if it's poking through in the back. And once I get it straight, I will leave it alone. But then you can add in the battery, and the battery is just a visual aid to show you how things are going to look. You're not going to actually incorporate that into your design. And then I have a Microbit and a motor board that I'm using there to show me about the size. And I'm doing the same for the one on the top that controls the arm. And I reversed it here because the one on the top faces the arm, and the one on the bottom faces in the back. Now I'm also using my little circles that are hollow so that I can put my button in, as well as my holes for wires. Now, where exactly you put yours on there, is kind of important. You want to make them so that the wires can go through, so the wires from the motors can come up through the bottom and then feed right in, and your button can go through the top, and then there's a wire hole for your wires to go through to the top of your microbit on your servo driver board. Now, once you have everything in the right spot and you're certain that it's okay, you join them so they are all grouped together, and then that will treat them as one object. Now, the next thing we've got to do is we've got to cut them apart. Now, this is not that hard, but you're going to take all the parts out that don't belong, so the microbit driver board and the microbit server board and the battery out. We don't need those in for what we're about to do. And I always like to make a copy of what I'm doing. So I move this whole thing over, and then I'm just going to copy the shell that I made, and I'm going to move that over. And that ensures that I have an original that is still good no matter what I do to this one while I'm cutting it. I'll have a good one that still works. Now, the secret to cutting it is using your invisible boxes, your hollow boxes, and making them match up. Now, you also have to understand that you are going to be making multiple copies of things. So when I drag this up, it's going to be about halfway or so. And what I can do from this point is duplicate both the invisible box as well as the shell that I'm trying to cut. And the reason for that is because we're going to cut half of one shell off, and then we're going to cut the other half of the shell. And so you're going to have two cutting shapes as well as two of your robot shells. So what I'm doing here is I've selected my bottom one, I've selected my top of the shell, and I'm joining them, and now you see the invisible part has disappeared. Now what I want to do is I'm going to go back in, and I'm going to select the bottom, and I stretched up my box so that it fills up, and then I'm going to join them, and now I have two separate shells, and I can move it up and I can verify that that's two shells. I'm not finished yet, because what I want to do is I want to make this so that it's easy to print. So I am going to cut the top part off where the arm is, and I will lower that down, and then I'll do the same method where I'm duplicating my shell and duplicating my cutting tool so that I have two of each, and I can use those to cut parts off. So the first thing I'll do is I select it, and then I select the bottom, and then I'll join them, and that will cut the top off. And then after I've duplicated it, I can do the same exact thing and move it the second hollow block and cut that off. Now what I'm left with are two parts, and you can see that I've selected my top one and I'm moving it around, and I've selected my bottom one. And I did redo this cut because it was not quite flush, meaning that when you turn it around you can see that there's a little bit of a gap there. And then the final cut that I want to do is a cut for the base. And here you can see what I did is I cut that base off right there from this little curve that I have over here on the right. Now, when I did do this originally, it did not cut out smooth because I didn't make things flat. But thankfully, I have my trusty 3D pen, and I can go through and I can attach everything the way it's supposed to be. So this was supposed to print out so that I had my caster tower together with the bottom of my robot shell. But it didn't quite work out, so I just went ahead and let it be and printed it all out anyway. And then I just used my 3D pen to put it together. Now I have to attach my my caster on there, and then it'll be set to go. So after I get my tower on, I'm going to attach the caster ball and the little holder on there, and it should be good to roll. Now, there are many different ways that you can choose to create your own design. The designs that have shown you have been things that I've come up with on my own. There are no rules to this. You can create your own designs. But what I have done as I've gone along is I've tried to make it easier for myself. So I was originally going to try and print all of this in one giant shell. But the problem with printing large things is they tend to want to come up off of the build plate while you're printing, and you end up with a warped shape. It's not completely flat. And so what I did with this was I decided to cut it apart and then just print the flat parts out, and then just use the 3D pen to join them. So now I'm using the 3D pen here to join the body part to the base where the servo is going, not the servo, the motor drivers are going to be mounted. And so this won't take too long. I just kind of do it real quick. And I just want to make sure everything's sticking together. I can always go back and add more. But sometimes you don't want to do that. You don't want to go and add everything all at once because you may have made a mistake, and you can easily pop it off and put it back on while it's still warm, while the filament is still warm. So now I'm lining up the top, and I'm going to try and attach this real quick so that I can get the body of my robot shell put together. Now I'm not going to do this arm part next. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a pause, and then I would put in all of the robot parts, and then before I closed it up, make sure everything works, and I would then put on the arm part of the shell. Now later on I will share how you can put the arm together, but you can see here what I've done is I've gone ahead and put the whole robot together except for this one little part right here, and I did that so that I could easily access all of the robotics on the inside. So after you turn over your robot shell to the robotics group and they add their robot parts in there, they will probably ask you to finish up the shell, sealing it so that that way you'll have a complete robot when they're done. But first, you've got to go through and tack on the robot shell.